Hi, my name is Keith Strickland, and I am so honored to welcome you to Bridge Builders. Bridge Builders is an event that we created to give community conversations, to be able to bring important topics to the forefront of our communities. It's brought to you by my agency, Making the Transition, the Hero app, and Mary Parker Foundation. Today, I am so honored to introduce you to Miss Mary Parker. Miss Parker is one of those people who her life is just an inspiration to all. She comes from a family of sharecroppers in Mississippi. She came to Atlanta. She started the very first and largest female black-owned security company, which employs almost 1,000 people. And she has been a leader in our business community, and now she brings that same leadership to our communities. So without any further wait, I would like to introduce you to the amazing Miss Mary Parker.
Good morning, Keith. Good morning. You know, for a moment I had to stop and look around to see who you were speaking of. So thank you for that beautiful, that warm introduction. And also
pleasure.
Thank you for being here with us today and being a part of this Bridge Builders conversation.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. I am so honored to be here for our second community conversation as it relates to bridging the gap between our community and law enforcement. Our session today is going to be on mental health, how it is impacting our community, our children, and especially our law enforcement community. We are so honored to have one of the most sought after speakers to join us today as our guest, Dr. Joyce Irons. She is the founder and owner of the Psychological Clarity Group, an organization that provides counseling for mental health as well as mental illness. And Dr. Irons is not a stranger to this particular industry. She has spent most of her life, over 30 years, counseling, teaching, training, and setting up programs that will benefit those with mental illness or mental health conditions. It is indeed my honor to introduce to you Dr. Joyce Irons. Dr. Joyce, welcome.
Good morning, Mrs. Parker, and thanks so very much for inviting me this morning.
Oh, it is our honor and our pleasure to have you join us. And one thing I've learned since speaking with you, Dr. Joyce, is the fact that many people really don't understand the difference in mental health and mental illness. And there's one other thing that we are impacted with today, and that is stress. So to begin our conversation, if you would please tell us the difference between mental health and mental illness, and then stress as you get to that point.
Thank you. I am so happy to be able to talk to you this morning about mental illness and mental health, because it is a difference. It's a big difference. And especially in our Black communities, we have that stigma that mental illness and mental health is one and the same. That is not true. And I welcome the opportunity to explain the differences, because it is a phenomenal difference. And if we find the difference, or we are aware of the difference, we can dispel some of the myth about good mental health, because there is no health if we don't have good, sound mental health.
Amen.
Mental health is teaching us, the individual, his own potential. It's a state of being, can work productively, can make a contribution to his or her own communities. And that is a sound mental health. And you know, Benjamin E. Mays, the late Benjamin E. Mays used to say, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. So we don't want to waste our mind. And we are the choices we make. And we are trying every day to make better choices. So it's our cognitive skills. Mental illness, on the other hand, that's a brain disorder. It's a medical condition. And it is treated mostly with therapy and monitored with medication. So we need a medical doctor to define the medical illness. He prescribes the prescription, and he then monitors the medication. We're talking about illness like schizophrenic and bipolar, extreme illness that has happened over a period of time. Good mental health is synonymous with good physical health. And until we learn how to think, behave, and make healthy choices, then our mental health is threatened.
Wow, that was an extraordinary example and explanation she just gave us. So Dr. Joyce, if you would share with our audience some of the things and some of the impacts that we as a community are plagued with today as a result of untreated, unrecognized mental health conditions.
That's a loaded question. But every day, my office and my therapists are loaded with people or clients who are coming in for the first time for ills that most happened in their early childhood. And they were suppressed and they went unnoticed. And that is why we have the high rate in divorces. We have the high rate in relationship issues. We have people not making good decisions as to whether or not to go to work or to stay at home, or when they are feeling ill or feeling bad, and they do not know that it is a mental illness instead of a physical illness. They are tired, they are stressed, and they are depressed, anxious, anxiety. And you know, we use that word stress and a lot. Stress, we use it so loosely. I'm so stressed out. But when you ask the question, what is the meaning of stress? Stress is any demand made on the body and the body's response to it. Now, what stresses Mrs. Parker may be a motivator for me. Each individual will experience stress in a different way. Oftentimes, when we talk about stress, it's almost in the negative. But there are good stressors. Getting a job, getting promoted on a job, your first baby, all of those are good stress. What do we call good stress? We call good stress eustress. EUSTRESS. As soon as the event is over, the stress is minimized. So when we talk about bad stress, we're talking about distress. DISTRESS. And distress is a loss, any loss. Loss of a relationship, loss of a job, loss of a loved one, a loss of a pet, any kind of distress that will be long lasting. And so how do we handle distress? Just remember, whether it's good stress or bad stress, we can never rid our bodies of stress. So we have to learn how to manage it or minimize it.
Wow, that was terrific. And as you're talking, I'm sitting here reminding myself of so many areas of stress in my own life. But I like to boast about the good stress. And I'm a type AAA. What are some of the treatments, or how can we as individuals or family members identify whether or not we're dealing with good stress or bad stress, or whether or not it matters as long as it's stress?
It does matter. But what we need to do is start paying attention to each other. And that's one of the good things about COVID-19. If you can find anything that's good about COVID-19, it really boxes us in so we can really get to know each other. It's resetting. I said God is resetting his kingdom. That's what I said.
Yes.
But if God is resetting his kingdom, I think he is allowing all of us, because Ms. Parker, you know, this is the first time that all of us as individuals have been on the same playing field equally. COVID-19, this pandemic can happen to any of us. I don't care what color we are. I don't care what your financial status is. I don't care if you are working, unemployed. All of us are on the same playing field. So for our community, it's giving us a chance to know each other all over again. That stay at home. The children are at home. We're working from home. And we don't really know who we are because we lack communications. How do we communicate with each other to find out what's going on? How do you know that your spouse is anxious or going through some psychological experiences? What are the changes in behavior? Are they withdrawing? Are they quiet? They're not talking? You're not asking them what's wrong? Even with our children are going through psychological changes. They're accustomed to hugging and kissing, and now they have to wear masks and have to be reminded to wear masks. We are learning a new norm because, in my opinion, after this COVID pandemic, I don't think the world is ever going to be the world we are accustomed to.
Dr. Joyce, that was so much powerful and important information in being able to recognize some of the symptoms. And I had a conversation earlier this week with Erica Mitchell in reference to the Atlanta Public Schools and our students. You hit on some points that's very, very critical. And the isolation aspect of what this pandemic has created for our children. Can you share with us any statistics that may indicate a rise in the results, mental health impact on these children?
I have looked at the research because it's so important that we see the rise, and it's very sparse as to the number, but we know it is a high number because 28 million people in the United States alone are impacted with COVID, and 500,000, a 500,000 deaths
Have died.
since last week have died. So children for the first time are experiencing deaths of loved ones firsthand. And how do they handle a loss? How do we talk about a loss? And how do they know that they are safe and they are stable? So we don't know the psychological impact, but I can tell you my office is seeing an alarming rate of children, especially with suicide. Teenagers from the ages of 12 to 18, they are leaving notes and taking pills and saying, I don't want this anymore. So we have to pay attention. We have to look at it is changing. We have to know that our families could be depressed. Talk about the depression. What's causing you to be depressed? And you look at their sleeping patterns. Are they sleeping at night? Are they being awakened? Can they get out of bed? Or look at the eating habits. So to answer your question, will the stats show the alarming rate? I have not found it. I know that they are there, and we are working on new stats every day. The research is even new to CDC. It's new to a lot of our agencies. So as we read, as we try to keep current, we can update our own files and portfolio as what we can do. And if we have that love and affection at home, it helps so much with our coping skills.
This is great stuff, you guys. And as I indicated early on, this is a phenomenon, and this is a very, very smart woman as it relates to the mental illness community. And let's shift just a little bit. it is so many areas of mental illness that we must address as a community, as a people, and as a country. One of the areas we've also looked at is that area of mental illness, mental health, and how it's impacting our law enforcement. Our law enforcement, they have huge responsibilities. There are first responders, there are critical workers, and there are also those individuals that we look to protect us at a time such as this. So Dr. Joyce, as it relates to community and our law enforcement, what are some of the things that we're noticing within the law enforcement community now that this unexpected thing called COVID-19, this pandemic, how is our law enforcement dealing with that?
I am so happy that you asked that question, because law enforcement, especially in the Black community, has to be redefined just like mental health. It has a bad rap. And in our community, we have to reestablish the respect for these essential workers. Yes, you say sometimes they are first offenders, they are first responders. They are also essential. It is amazing that when we get a suicide call, the victim normally calls 911 or the law enforcement before they will call medical help. So law enforcement have to do so very many things that we are unaware of. And these same law enforcers, they have families too. And each day they leave their families, they don't know how they're going to return or if they're going to return. So the anxiety and the stress is already there before they answer a call. So in the communities, we have to partner ourselves.
Absolutely.
We have to reset with our police officers or law enforcers and try to understand that they too are human too. They too have stressors. They too have economic problems. They too have relationship problems. And they have to put all that aside and answer to 911 because it is an emergency. And most of our law enforcers, as far as the research goes, they are not properly trained. They don't always know when a call is suicidal from mental illness. They don't know when a person has a gun to his head, that he has had this mental illness ever since he was a child. And most mental illness, let me say, it starts by the age of 24 years old. And if we don't know what signs to look for, how do we expect the law enforcers, officers to know what to look for? All they know is they're answering a call. They're answering a crisis. So what we as the community can do, the same thing that we are doing with mental health, we have to educate. We have to help them to understand what mental health really is and what kind of training that they can do. Now, oftentimes in my research on the law enforcement, those officers are trained upon inception for the job physically. You know, how can they withstand, crawling through a fence or going through a fire or breaking down a house, or all of this stuff is physical. But they're not properly trained to identify symptoms of mental illness, because we are just now being trained to do so. And these mental illnesses, most of us have suffered in silence. And now we can know that it's not a taboo. Help is on the way. And President Obama made it known during his administration that we're going to bring this mental health to the forefront, because 26% of Americans suffer from mental illness. And unless we take care of those, and 42 million people in the United States, have mental illnesses. And 2 million of those people die at the hands of the policemen because they did not know it was a mental illness.
And Dr. Joyce, this is such a great segue into the purpose of this conversation today. We have identified these conversations are taking place. The mental health community, they're talking about the issues, how to identify them. We have police departments, they're talking. Our educators are talking. But the purpose of convening here today is to bring the community, bring all the groups together so we can hear what's being done, we can learn more about how to identify them, and also how to get rid of the stigma of people not wanting to seek treatment. And during some of our conversations and research has really revealed that people do not seek counseling and therapy because they're afraid of losing their jobs or the confidentiality of all of that. But I can assure you, with this practice, with this Clarity Psychological Group and many other organizations providing these services, it's highly confidential. You also mentioned a few moments ago that help is on the way. Many employees do not realize that most corporations have programs in place called EPA. It is EAP, the Employee Assistance Program.
Absolutely.
And we're encouraging you to take advantages of those services that's being provided. We know here in Fulton County, which is the arm to mental health for the city of Atlanta, they also have various programs. We will provide you with the links to some of these organizations during and after the conclusion of this program today. But I want to go back to the law enforcement. That is something that's very dear and near to my heart, mainly because I have a special needs granddaughter and we've had encounters with law enforcement. They perceived the activity as some type of drug abuse and even physical abuse. But she was having a behavior event. And with that, I began to question myself. Is there any tool that police officers are trained that they may be able to identify where a mental illness could be in place, or it could be some type of mental behavior as opposed to some of the other things that they can recognize?
In my opinion, doing my research, there are not any tools readily available, but there are tools that are in the process of being developed with these educational programs for the police officers. And there is one agency called the COPS. It's the Community Orientation Policy Agency. They are working, diligently with the law enforcement organizations to make sure that these tools are being utilized. Now, the state of Massachusetts is a leading state that has developed certain tools. And what they do upon the application and interviewing of new police officers, they are mandated that all officers have the necessary training and the tools to recognize any symptom that may be a mental health symptom. And then there's another program with the police officers called the IEAPC. It's a national federal organization that has taken upon themselves, because they have billions of dollars allocated for education and for developing these proper tools in order for the law enforcers to use in order to de-escalate some of these conditions or symptoms when they see them, to prevent so many illness and so many deaths because it's unknown. We are also working to educate these agencies and to build a better rapport with our law enforcers. One of the things that I have realized in my company, that I see law enforcement officers on a daily basis. And we are not aware that the problems and the mental health issues that these individual officers are encountering themselves even before they go out. They're stressed. Some of them just lost a loved one to COVID. And that same day they have to go out and to answer a call or crisis. They need, in my opinion, upon their screening, not to just look at the physical aspect of the new applicant, but to have a mandate that these new officers apply for a mental health service at least 3 or 4 times during the year. And you mentioned the EAP services. Many of us in our communities do not even know that service exists. But organizations have to have that service provided for their employees. It is a federal law, but many of the organizations do not share that information with their employees. You get up to 5 to 8 sessions per year, free, to just go to your mental health services, and that is not enforced. So as you say, a lot of these law enforcement officers will not come to therapy because, number one, they do not feel that we as professionals know their line of duty, and we don't know whether or not to include that they are fit for duty. So they don't want to lose their jobs. That's their income. Also, the confidentiality. That's really big. But with mental health, that is our first pledge, to make sure that we keep everything confidential. That's the Terrorism Act. And we have to tell every client upon entering, we will not break this confidentiality unless you're suicidal, homicidal, or if you have small children and we think they're in harm's way, we're an advocate for the children, so we have to report that. But other than that, your records are completely confidential. So we have to enforce that, and we have to encourage that, and we have to partner with these officers and let them know you do not have to suffer in silence. Help is on the way, and because billions of dollars have been allocated by all of these special agencies, thanks to President Obama, we have to go in now and make sure that these funds are allocated first to the officers, because they have to have self-care. They've got to take care of their families and themselves so they can step outside of themselves and be there for the communities.
Woo! Amen. Can we give her a round of applause right here, right here? Because Dr. Irons, what you're teaching us today is that undetected, untreated mental health conditions is a silent killer.
It is.
It is a silent killer.
Just like high blood pressure. It is.
And within our communities, we tend to run away from things like that. We know how we address high blood pressure and diabetes. It's like it's here, but eventually it's going to go away, and we don't have to do anything about it. But that is not true. We have looked at statistics and data that says that 1 out of every 4 individuals who are arrested have been diagnosed with some type of mental illness.
That is absolutely true.
And with law enforcement, as well as our community, not being aware of how to identify and assess some of these needs, it is a silent killer.
It is.
And Dr. Irons, I'm so excited about where this is going. I've had several conversations already. And one of the things I did ask Dr. Joyce is, what is an immediate thing that we can do? And she said that she will assume the responsibility of convening therapists to bring here at Junction 2800, making the services available to our community and to our children who so desperately need some type of treatment. And if nothing else, to have someone listen to what their conditions are and be able to make recommendations from there.
And may I just add, the more we in our community become aware, we can reduce this stigma of that mental illness is to be swept under the carpet and not talked about. We can stop suffering in silence. And it's so important to know that at our practice, the Clarity Psychological Group, located on Cascade Road,
Yes.
we are now seeing an alarming rate of men who almost break the door down saying, oh, I couldn't wait to get here. And they look at the sofa and they say, am I to be diagnosed? And they leave there with such a positive response to having come. And they said, all of this time, where were you 10 years ago? But they weren't ready 10 years ago. And now I see almost as many males as I see females. And we are so blessed because they run and tell somebody that you're talking. It's almost like you're talking to your grandmother. So we are really happy to know that we are making a significant difference in our Black communities, that is no longer a stigma, and that we no longer have to suffer in silence. And I am just so pleased today that you invited me, because I love the opportunity to create this awareness that come, let's heal, and let's heal together. Our physical health, our mental health, same thread run together. And like I said earlier, without good mental health, there is no help. And if you don't believe it, just go to a nursing home. Look at patients, your mother, your grandmother with Alzheimer's. When your mind is gone, like Benjamin may say, it's a terrible thing to lose.
Yes, indeed. Now, there is someone that I want to recognize whom I've been familiar with, the works that they've done in the mental health profession for years now. And that's Pastor Thomas. Pastor Thomas, years ago, and I remember when you first moved into your office, because we came in, prayed, and anointed it, and it was really, really blessed, and it was so great for our community. As you sit and listen today, do you have any comments that you'd like to share with the audience, or do you have a question?
Diane, you hit it. You nailed it. What you said was so accurate, and unfortunately, the larger part of the community doesn't quite understand that reality. And so what you presented today to those of us here and those of us who are watching is essential to understand not only mental health, the difference between mental health and mental illness, but also to understand the dynamic that we must address as a community in order to be healthy, from childhood to middle age, because a lot of things we deal with, whether it be sometimes people have terminal or even illnesses that are just that are there, kidney dialysis, those type of things. Those things create issues, and so sometimes we may have somebody in our family that we don't understand that that's what they're dealing with. And so I think that this is the right path to take, because mental health affects the whole gamut. And so as pastor, and as you mentioned, the organization that we started, trying to address that, but this is the continuation of what needs to be done in our community. Even as we look at the streets and businesses closing and some of the behavior we see, all relates back to mental health. So I think this is more than anything else. I think this is significant in making a transformation. We can, you can buy houses all day long, and that's important, but also mental health puts the right framework and frame of mind in a house, in a place. And so I think this is a great start. I think it's a great start.
Well, thank you, Pastor Thomas, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you so much.
Because we are recruiting today, and anyone who wants to, join in with the things that we're doing, we welcome you. We welcome your resources, and we welcome your time and commitment to this community, because change begets change. And Dr. Irons, I know you have some other things to share with us, but I would like to just pull it all together for a moment. We have, as I indicated, the bridge builders, and that the purpose of that is to convene our community. With that, we want to continue moving forward with creating an environment where our community is comfortable coming together with us, where we have our other leaders within the community, and I'm just convinced that together we can accomplish a lot more. But here's the one thing that we must understand is when we began dealing with our children and our law enforcement and the community as a whole, we have to, and I want to say this again, we must come with a willing and cheerful spirit. Because if we don't do that, the people that we're dealing with will also feel it.
And I'm so happy to be invited to be a part of this building, this bridge building, so the bridge can go back and forth. And I'm hoping most of you here will join us. This is our community, and I can tell you, Henry David Thoreau says, any time is a good time if you know what to do with it. So for African Americans, this is our time. Let's see what we can do with it.
This is so wonderful. This is so absolutely wonderful. So at this time, we are going to open the floor to you and to our Zoom participants for any questions you may have for Dr. Irons today. Well, I'm so proud. My granddaughter has the first question. Welcome, Amber.
Why do you think companies don't enforce mental health breaks like mandatory vacations, or is it assumed that with our vacation time, it is being served as a mental health break?
Wow. You on target. And that is one of the tools that we are now trying to initiate into corporate America. I did a couple of sessions by Zoom. Just a couple of weeks ago, I did IBM. So what we are doing is we are going into corporations to let them know that the attrition rate can be answered as well as productivity if we address these issues before they become a crisis. So there are some tools we have to do to educate corporate America, that we need to start treating our employees, employer, as a community. Let's heal within. Let's have lunch and learn mental health sessions. Let's have question and answers. I'm doing an awful lot of that now on Zoom, and it's really being well received. So the more we talk this up, it's not a malady.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Great question.
Great
Mr.
question.
Brown, thank you
My
for
neighbor.
sharing with us.
My neighbor.
Dr. Irons, it's so good to see you here.
You too. Thank
And
you
you said
very much for coming.
some marvelous things that's
Thank you.
helping the community, and we can commend you on that. And definitely Mary Parker and the heroes and making the transitions and
Thank you.
everything that's happening here is just so wonderful for our community. I guess I look at things from a business standpoint. I'm going to try to twist it up here a little bit because I work with younger kids. Nowadays, it used to be when we came up, we wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer, or a firefighter. Now, if you ask that same question, you get something different. And you have the rap music that's just steady coming into our community that's deprogramming the mind to where you don't have a way of thinking, that you have a way out. So then you get involved and then you start having these mental conditions. When do you think a change is going to happen to where it happened for us in the beginning that made us who we are, to give these kids a better chance? Do we see that coming about at any point in time that would slow down the number of patients that you're receiving from a mental health standpoint?
Okay, very good question, and that's my neighbor. And you are thinking just like our generation think. We, as parents, dropped the ball somewhere. I do not know where, but we dropped the ball. And so cell phones and all of these things became our substitute, our teachers. So, and cell phones are not all bad. We just have to redirect them as to how to best use these cell phones. Because we still have good kids. We have very good kids. Are they going to be the children that we were? I don't know that. But they're going to be good children. They have good ideas. But we got to still be parents. You know, we used to say it takes a village to raise our children. What happened to us, the village? Somehow we said, we give up. We can't compete with these cell phones and all these different apparatuses that's happening with our children. But we can still be good parents, and that's what God is holding us accountable for during COVID, to reset, to train, to listen. We are now seeing our children now doing COVID for the first time. We did not know that our children use profanity the way they use profanity. We didn't know that they sleep with these cell phones. We didn't know that they look at the kinds of chat rooms that they are looking at. We have an opportunity now to observe our children and to boldly say no. My 17-year-old granddaughter on Saturday left for the Air Force. It broke my heart. I cried all Saturday. You know, she's going in the Air Force. But she said, Nina, I have a plan. I'm going in the Air Force Reserve. I would do my basic training in Lackland, Texas, and then I will come back and I'm accepted to Howard. I'm going to Howard University for IT and finance. And the Air Force is going to take me there. They're going to do all of this. And when she told me her goals and her plans, I said, wow. They're doing it differently from what we did it, but they're doing it well. And we have to embrace them, be there for them. And I promise, I'm going to write you a letter every week. Send me your address. I will do whatever I need to do. And that's what we have to do. We have to embrace them. When they are alone, find out why they're alone. Why are they in their rooms? Why won't they come to the table to eat? But we have to take time. And I ask them, how do you spell love? And they say Love. No, Time. What you give your time to, what you invest your time in, is love. And we, as parents, this is our opportunity during COVID to reset. We will get our generation back. Mrs. Parker is setting the foundation for us to build. We cannot always look at somebody else to build our black communities. If any time is a good time for African Americans, it is now.
It is now.
And today, my motto has always been, if it can be done, do it now. We can blame generations and this and that, but let's start today looking within to see how we can build a better community.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have time for about how many more?
One more, because
She has to get back to her clients. One more question, please.
okay, yes.
I believe, is this from a Zoom?
Yeah, we have a lively Zoom chat, and I wanted to get a few of those thoughts out there. And we
okay.
can make these very quick. All right. So this is from Roz. And she says, do you know what steps are being made by APD and the mayor to have mental health professionals coordinate with the calls that require this level of expertise, including perhaps traveling with the officer?
We are researching that, and we have Pastor Thomas here, who also represents the city of Atlanta. Pastor, do you have an answer to that?
Please. Yes.
As the city is working to kind of address the issues that we had this past summer with law enforcement, they're trying to do some reform. One of the key elements of reform is, first of all, train officers in regard to how to assess a situation as relates to mental health. And secondly, there is the movement, and I'm not going to say it's going to happen this year, but there is a movement afoot to begin to allow more mental health professionals to be a part of the police department. Mm-hmm. Not the force in terms of the post-certified, but a part of the department, so they can participate more in these activities.
Thank you so much for that.
And thank you so much for asking.
Thank you so much.
Wow, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your participation today, and we welcome your ongoing participation and support for what we're doing here in the Campbellton Road District. Thank you. May God bless all of you, and believe me, we will have a part 2 to this session. Thank you, and thank you so much, Dr. Iron.
Yes,
you were absolutely brilliant, more than I even expected, as well as I know what you do in your practice. God bless you.
Okay, thank you, my friend, and thanks for inviting me. You have been a wonderful audience, and thank you for your questions, and thank you for your attention, and I hope when part 2 shows up, that you also would show up. Any advice that you have, or if you know someone who is experiencing any mental health illnesses, you can call the Clarity Psychological Group. I'm here on Cascade Road in the Promenade Building, and you can call our number, or you can call your EAP and request that you see a therapist. It does not have to be the Clarity Psychological Group, but get help. You no longer have to suffer in silence. And thank you so very much for your participation.
Thank you all, and continue to have a wonderfully blessed day.